You're listening to the Paranormal UK Radio Network, and now it's time for the Paranormal Peep Show.
Hi folks, welcome to the Paranormal Peep Show with myself, Andy Chaplin, and Neil Geddes-Ward. Neil, how's your Christmas?
Yeah, strange actually, but thank you for asking. I was actually working over the Christmas period, so I was doing some weird shifts. So as everybody was winding down on their Christmas evening, I was actually having to wind myself up a little bit and start work at 10 p.m. and work right through till 10 a.m. the next day. So although I was working from home, it's still a strange experience because you go around to people's houses and you can't relax.
Yeah.
Because then you know you've got to go to work later.
Oh,
whereas most people have a few bevies and they think, right, off to bed I go. But no, I couldn't do that. So it was a bit bizarre. So I did catch Father Christmas coming down the chimney. Obviously, that's one of the positive sides of working over the Christmas period. So you can definitely see what you're going to get the next day.
Did he have his sacks all over your bed?
Yes, yeah. Unfortunately, because of the cutbacks and that, it wasn't as much as previous years. But yeah, pardon me. But how was yours?
Fairly boring, to be honest. Most of my family, bless them, are kind of dying off year by year. So a very small and quiet one, really.
Yeah, I know what it's like. Well, we've had a bit of a hectic year. We've had the Queen passing in 2022. I lost my father in 2022. So it's been a bit of a rocky road for quite a few people. And sadly, I have to say that at the beginning of December, one of the architects of the Paranormal UK Radio Network, which this runs out on, our Paranormal Peep Show runs out on, Mark Johnson sadly lost his wife at the beginning of December. So our condolences to Mark and family on that very sad note. So our hearts go out to him on that one. So, yeah, it has been a rocky road for quite a few people. So hopefully things will start to pick up for 2023. But people always hope for that, don't they? Every year they think, thumbs up for next year.
It just seems like every year for the past 2 or 3 years, like every month almost, things just get worse and worse and worse, whether it's inflation, the economy, COVID, a new variant, blah, 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 blah. It's just, now in the cost of living crisis, and I'm noticing it as well. My bank account is not in a happy state. And every time I go out to, I'm now kind of like an addict for the Tesco reduced label section.
Oh, I've always been with the yellow sticker brigade, yeah.
Yeah. So whenever I go to Tesco's, and this is not an advert for Tesco's, most supermarkets probably have this, but there's a reduced aisle of things that are like just about out of date or just kind of like going off, and sweep those out in the basket they go. Although yesterday, I will have to say, I went to see the film. I went to see Avatar. We'll come to that in a moment. But afterwards, I went to Tesco's. Right, went to the reduced aisle. I put all of my items, probably about 30 reduced items. I get to the tills and nothing will scan in. And the lady comes over and she goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, the reduced labels aren't working with the barcode at the moment. You'll have to type in the number. These numbers are 16 digits on each item. I have 30 items." Do you know what I did? I took the basket, I walked back to the reduced section to dump the basket down. You deal with it. The people in charge of making sure they scan through, they can put all the items back where they belong.
Oh my God. I mean, by the time they've read through the last barcode, all that food's well out of date.
I know. They should have at least just have a sign saying, "I'm sorry, but the reduced barcodes are not working," which would, you could then kind of plan ahead and either kind of get less of them or buy items that are not reduced. But I mean, 16 digits per label for 30 items. I'm not sitting there going beep, 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 and invariably you're going to get a couple of digits wrong. So it will say invalid, so you'll have to do it again. So yeah, I saw Avatar 2 last night. I was impressed by the graphics, like CGI. Story was kind of like been there, seen it, done it. Kind of like it's nothing massive about the storyline, but I kind of like wonder. Neil, I don't know about you. When you're working on a computer, does your computer struggle ever? Do you work with Mac or PC? Do you get the little beach ball of doom?
Yeah, it happens quite frequently. Actually, it depends on the sort of power of the computer, I guess.
So this is it, the power of the computer. For something like Avatar, which was like 3 hours, the amount of complicated detail and the power that they would need to create that movie. And I don't know how they do it, whether they must have loads of different computers working on different aspects and then bring it all onto the same thing. I don't know, but my computer struggles doing even like basic things, like really basic things. What kind of computers do they work with?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I thought you might get a little spiraling circle on the movie screen. You know,
yeah.
Please wait for the next scene loads up or something.
It's just mind-boggling. I mean, I'll be working on something really simple in Photoshop, and I'll get the little beach ball waiting for it to do something. And you watch Avatar, and it's just mind-blowing 3D graphics, and you think, how the hell do their computers cope with?
Well, I do know. I don't know how they do it now, but I have spoken to people that know about it, and they have what they call render farms, and it's literally loads of computers, and they leave them on all day, all night,
right?
And they sort of work out the basic animation, and then to render all that stuff, they've got all these different computers like doing certain scenes. So it's not just one computer doing everything; it's loads of computers doing everything. Yeah. Hence, literally, there's no one necessarily sitting at them, but they just punch it out through their own network, and they all, render their different scenes and whatnot. But I imagine these days they get even more powerful, so you don't need as many render farms. But what was an interesting, it reminds me something about the Toy Story movie, where they made the Toy Story movie back in 1993, 4, I can't remember. Obviously, one of the first earliest animations that they nearly lost the whole movie on one computer because it crashed or something. And they was thinking, shit, we haven't got a way of retrieving this. And it just so happened that one of the animators had saved a version of it on their computer back at home. So she had to drive back at home, pick up her computer, bring it into work, and re-offload all the data back onto one of the Pixar computers.
That was, what was 93, was that?
Something 93, 94, something like that.
I mean, just think about the computer technology that we had available to us back then. We had the most bog standard. So for something like Toy Story, can you imagine the amount of computer power that would be needed using those computers?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Well, apparently, one of the reasons they made Toy Story, again, this is what I heard, was because when in the early days of computers, they managed to do 3D animation, lots of it came out looking very plasticky looking because they didn't have the power to do the wrinkly faces on old people or monsters that well. And so they found that doing smooth plastic looking things worked quite well. And so that's why they decided to do a movie like Toy Story, because you could do all the toys as plastic.
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense, yeah.
But I think it really changed when they had Jurassic Park, which was, the real sort of stuff. But again, they did a lot of those scenes at night time because it was easier to render them without having to do lots and lots of detail in the background. So you got the T-Rex in the pouring rain in the night jungle, which was effective, but they didn't have to render everything totally as such. They could cut a lot out.
Yeah, I liked Avatar. I think it was pretty good. And another reason I specifically went to see it was because the wokes hate it. They think it's cultural appropriation of Native Americans. I'm sorry, Native Americans aren't blue. What are you talking about, you crazy lunatics? I saw that movie and I thought none of this is anything to do with Native Americans whatsoever. This is a story about blue aliens on an alien planet.
Is Sigourney Weaver in it, or
she was? Yeah, she was one of the head scientists. I actually forgotten. I think she was in the first Avatar. I've forgotten.
But she died in the first Avatar, so I wonder how she could be in the second one. But anything's possible with a bit of overnight rendering.
Yeah. Have you had anything spooky, or going back onto the paranormal subject? Anything spooky wooky happen over Christmas time?
Not really. But what about you?
No, not really as well.
Well, don't worry. We got lots of spooky, weird stuff that we can talk about because
actually, this lead on to the next guest. I'm noticing. I tell you what, I'm noticing on Facebook. Although I am a member of a few different groups, I'm noticing a lot more UFOs activity being seen. And I saw a video about somebody noticing odd things happening above CERN in Switzerland, the Hadron Collider. What the hell are they doing?
Could they be connected? Yeah, maybe UFOs would be interested in that sort of technology anyway, because they've hovered outside atomic power plants and things like that. So I'm sure our latest technology would be of interest to them.
Or are CERN trying to rip open a space-time continuum hole and open up a portal to God knows what and things like that?
Maybe CERN is part of their technology and we've stolen it and they want it. Yeah. Anyway, we better welcome our guests. So welcome to the Paranormal Peep Show for a second return visit. It's Robert Hulse. Hello, Robert. How are you?
Hi, Robert.
Hello, guys. I'm really well, thank you. And I've just been sitting here listening to you talking. It was a bit like, I don't know. It was great to hear you, but it just felt a bit like sitting in the dentist waiting room. I've got to go in for a filling or something.
Yeah, well, that's why we're filling in. Exactly. But yeah. The dentist waiting room. I think I'd rather look at goldfish than listen to us chatting. But But anyway, it's good to have you back on. You was on with us about a year ago, just over a year ago. We had a great chat with you then, and we had lots of positive feedback from people that listened to our interview. Good. They said, lots of interesting stuff, and I took away lots of interesting information from it, and I represented it at some of the talks. And I said that, you came on our show and you told us about bus driving friend that had the strange experiences with the beans in his house. And if anybody wants to know what we're talking about, I would suggest they go back to our very first interview with you, which I will put the link in our YouTube version, and it'll probably be under Spreaker as Robert Hulse Paranormal Peep Show. If you type that in, hopefully that'll bring that previous interview up as well on the MP3 platform of Spreaker. So, I felt that the time was right to bring you back on to see what other amazing things, because I remember you saying that you said there's so much more you could tell us. And obviously, this is why we've asked you back, because I think there is more to tell. And obviously, you've had some very interesting experiences. I know you got your friend, the bus driver fellow, that you could perhaps relate as well.
Yeah.
So, how are you, first of all? I know you went away to Norway, didn't you?
Yeah, I've been to Norway for, in total, over 2 months this year. I've been helping my friend Kate Thorvaldsen, who is well known as the Magnet Lady. And the reason for that is that she has implants in her body, either side of her nose. I think she's got them here. She's got them in her neck, all across her collarbone, and all down the spine. And these have been shown on CT scan, so they're definitely there. And she can take a small neodymium magnet, stick it on, and just shake her head, and they won't come off. So these implants must be magnetic.
What are the doctors? Because obviously most doctors have been completely mainstream programmed. What are they saying they are?
They don't say, because because to be perfectly honest with you, it was done what shall we say, without full authorization of
grid,
sort of off grid, yes. Yeah. But I've seen the the scans themselves, and of course Kate wrote a book which I there we are, hybrid story.
A hybrid story.
Yeah.
How big are the implants?
Oh, they're only small.
Like grain of rice, or smaller than that?
Yeah, probably grain of rice, I would think. So I edited this book for Kate, and I've also done another one since then for her. So I've been helping her, do a house up in a garden prior to possibly selling it, and it was great to be in Norway. It's a lovely country, I must say. And the area where she lives is called Little Norway. It's near the area where crikey, the film was made about the the heavy water plant in the Second World War.
Yeah.
you know, and yeah, it's beautiful. It's mountains and lakes and all that kind of thing.
I went there in about 95 on a school trip. Yeah, it's really
Oh yeah, yeah,
expensive, but nice.
yeah. So I guess I'll be going back next year sometime.
Did it snow when you was there, or was it?
No, it didn't. But I did have a trip out to the top of a mountain, and there was plenty of snow on the top of the mountain. Yeah.
Now, it's interesting you mentioned her having the implants.
Yeah.
Does she kind of recall where they came from, or have? I mean, she must have experienced life before them.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I mean, she's yeah, she's had loads of ET experiences in her life.
Yeah.
And they've, I mean, these pictures aren't great, but that's one of her first memories, if I can just get it there.
A grey type being.
Yes.
Was it positive or negative?
She was in the cot. Well, that was positive.
Positive, right.
She just felt that they were there to check up on her to see that she was okay.
Yeah.
Because she's obviously got connection with them in the same way that I have. Yeah, because, you know, we have similar things happen, which is interesting. But the implants, I mean, she started drawing, you know, pieces of art which contain these figures. I don't know whether you can see them at the bottom there. She suddenly went to being mad on horses to drawing pictures of these strange beings. Yeah. So, and then she had a big event whereby she was staying at a cabin up in the mountains on her own, and she was taken by them, and they put some kind of a helmet on her head, and which pulled up here and held her eyes open, and they put things in her ears, and goodness knows what else, and it changed her, you know.
Yeah, I'd imagine it would.
But you know, Kate came over here in, I think, probably the 90s, speaking at Bufora conference, and also, you know, I mean, she's been to South America speaking there, Barcelona this year, America a few times, on the Art Bell show.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So yeah, she's quite well known.
Did she find the purpose of the helmet, and what happened when she wore the helmet?
That thing was like, I don't know whether I could find a picture here, but it was holding her. It was holding her eyes open. So yeah, I don't know where that picture is in here.
Maybe it's to put the implants.
It's more a case of like, did she find out what the helmet was for?
Oh, there we are. I don't know whether you can, it's the lighting's not very good, but can you see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
So did she find out what it was for, what the purpose was?
Well, I think it was just to hold her head absolutely still.
Right.
And she had marks above her eyebrows here, as if like forks had been pulling her eyes open.
Right.
So that and I think there was a needle put in her ear. You know, when she had regression on it, she asked that she didn't want to go any farther than that because you know, some of these things are, you know, so painful. You know, she didn't want to remember what happened.
Yeah.
So, you know.
So does she know? I mean, she does talks about it, but I mean, I suppose that she would be a contactee. Is that the word, or an experiencer? I don't know.
Yeah, well, you know, she's got gifts. She can, you know, she's been a healer. A psychic. I mean, she helped the police with a murder inquiry,
right?
Because the victim, the young girl, actually visited her in the kitchen of her home, and Kate was able to see the whole scene through her eyes.
Crikey.
And so she saw the murderer. She saw the car, the design of the seat covers, and she knew where it had happened. And the police were very, very interested in what she knew. And in fact, she was taken by the police to that part of Norway to look at the scene, and she identified one of the suspects who they hadn't actually arrested, but she identified him.
Wow. Did it lead to a prosecution?
You know, I can't remember. It was a guy from the very north of Norway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. It reminds me of that film, The Eyes of Laura Mars. It was a science fiction film.
Yeah.
1978, I think, something like that. Irving Kershner was a director who directed The Empire Strikes Back. Why I remember all that, I don't know, but there we go.
Yeah.
Who was a girl that could see through the eyes of the killer or something like that.
Yeah, sure.
Psychic remote viewing type of film before people really knew about that sort of stuff. So
yeah.
It almost sounds like that kind of thing. But I mean, obviously, we got the spirit involved of the girl that being killed, sadly. Wow.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thing. So getting back to yourself then, with your own, you've got implants, you believe, as well, don't you? Because you're an ET experiencer, for those that don't know the story.
Yeah, sure. I'm quite sure I had one put up my nose when I was 7, I think, after being taken in Prestatting off the beach with my sister, where we were missing for 4 hours, which we talked about at quite some length in the first interview. But when I came home from the holiday, every time I washed my face in the sink, because and you threw the water up on your face, blood would just flow from my nose into the water, and I got to the point where I was frightened of touching my face, and so that probably lasted, I don't know, a couple of weeks, until it stopped. So I'm quite sure I had one up my nose. I've definitely got one in my hand here.
Can you feel it? You feel like a lump?
Oh yeah, there's a lump there. All right, I don't know whether you can just make it out or not.
Did you try the magnet trick that Kate has done, or is it?
No, I didn't actually. But that's in exactly the same location as Dr. Mary Helen Hensley in Ireland, who remembers getting hers in exactly the same place, and it starts as a double puncture mark. It's like a I don't know, like being bitten by something, It's a double puncture, and she also got a double puncture just below the left knee on the inside at the same time, which I've got exactly the same thing.
Right.
So again, I could send you a picture of that.
Yeah,
which I took years ago. I mean, obviously it's faded now, and also I can show you that another contactee, abductee, a part of a family from up in Lancashire who were taken. The son Ben, I was staying there with the family for a few days, and I was telling them that, sometimes these marks that we get are not, very obvious. You have to learn to know what you're looking at, which you do after many years. And I mentioned this double puncture mark by my knee, so I showed them. And so everybody else was rolling up their trouser legs just to see if they'd got the same thing. And lo and behold, young Ben had got exactly the same thing as me in exactly the same place.
Wow.
So I can send you that photograph.
Yeah. Does he recall anything at all happening to himself?
Oh, yeah. The whole family were taken. They were going out to a Burger King, I think. They were actually part of that series, the Real 4400.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, crikey. My memory. There's Ben, and there's Alexander, and Rachel, the mum, and Rachel's mum, Anne, Devereaux. That's right. That's the name, Devereaux. Yeah. So they've been, in documentaries and and stuff. So
with these double puncture marks, do they like how long do the marks last for, and do they ooze anything? Do they ooze blood or pus?
no,
Like that?
no, they don't ooze anything at all.
Yeah.
It's they sometimes a bruise will come up from underneath where the double punctures have been, because sometimes you can tell quite easily that they're quite deep, these things. I mean, I got one up here, not the collarbone, but on the first rib going down there, just before I went over to Norway earlier this year. And I think I've got a photograph of it somewhere, which I could send to you if it, if you'd like. But and that was quite sore.
Have you noticed a pattern in like how many puncture wounds people get, how many implants people get, and how often they occur? Can somebody have 10 of them, and do they happen like every month or every week or every year?
No, I would say not. There are periods when you get more than others. Sometimes the ETs will leave you alone for a few years, perhaps.
Right.
And then for some reason, if something, like when my wife became ill, and then I got double punctures on the inside of my left arm. I got a triangle of puncture marks on the side of my bum. And then of course after Jenny had passed in the June of 2013, the end of June, in October of that year, 17th of October, I got that very, very deep heart-shaped bruise on the inside of my right arm, and that area inside the right arm is a particular favourite of theirs. Have you ever seen that picture of that?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Well, I could send you that too. I mean, why not? It's time.
Get out the family album.
Well, it's time to stop hiding in the shadows. We've got to be open and straightforward about this sort of thing now.
What intrigues me about these punches, that I mean, I would have thought. I mean, it depends on the way we're interpreting. We might be misinterpreting what the function of these things are for.
Yeah.
Most people assume that they're tracking devices. So if we go with that device, that they're tracking devices, what I would like to know is why would they then re-punch you with more tracking devices over a period of time?
Well, in the case of the one here, on the hand, the double puncture there, Mary Hensley gave an excellent interview some years ago to the bases guy,
Miles Johnson.
Miles Johnson, yeah. It's a really good interview. And during the interview, she talks about receiving the double puncture mark, and this was actually before I knew her. Were they from Arcturans?
Right.
Two of them were there, and they gave her the double puncture, and she felt it, and she said, "Hang on a minute, what's that for?" And they said, "Well, that is to enable us to take you instantly, bodily, if we need to." So I'm guessing that, as I got the same thing, that's what mine's for.
Right.
And so in Mary Helen's case, they took her to, well, she was having trouble with her stomach and the gallbladder, I think, at the time. And they took her to a jungle somewhere in South America, I think. And they showed her a particular plant which was very easy to distinguish, for the shape of the flower and stuff. And apparently they make tea out of it. And they said to her, "You've got to get this stuff and drink it as a tea, and it will cure your problem."
Right.
And so she did, and it did cure her of the of the problem. And now I think one of her friends is actually selling the damn stuff.
What's it called, just in case? Because I've had stomach problems in the past.
There we go.
So I'm intrigued.
What the hell was it called?
ETT.
Not Java tea or something like that. Is it? No, I'll have to let you know about.
Yeah,
that.
let's if you do think of it, let Neil know, and hopefully for the video we'll flash it up as a text.
Free advert.
Yeah.
ETT, I like that though.
ETT, yeah.
Well, I suppose one reason for re-implanting something is if some bugger comes along with a magnet and starts screwing up because of
Oh yeah.
Well, think about if you take a neo, because they're quite strong magnets, the neon ones.
Yeah.
If you take that to a hard drive, it will wipe the hard drive. If you put it near a mobile phone, it will screw up the mobile phone. So it could well be that if you put it to a tracking device, it will screw that up. So they'll just think, "Oh God, I've got to do another one now."
Yes.
Never mind.
Yes. Well, I mean, that's one of the reasons why Kate would never have any removed.
Right.
Because they seem to be symmetrically placed in her body. And if they take one or two out, it might screw up the whole business.
They've got to work in unison together.
I think
we really don't know if they're positive or negative. Obviously, with like a positive Arcturian contact, it would highly likely be a positive thing.
Yeah.
If it's the greys, highly likely negative. But we don't know. It could be tracking. It could be monitoring, almost like what are those Fitbit watch things that tell you about heart rate and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
like an advanced version of that. Or it could even be like there may be something to do with like healing or self-regulating or adapting the body to be higher vibration. There could be so many options about what they could be for.
Could be all of those things.
But if you think about the when you go for a brainwave activity scan, they put loads of electrodes on your head. Get your various brainwaves. So it's not just one. They need to capture information from all sorts of frequencies of different brainwaves. So maybe it's a similar thing with these devices.
Well, yeah, but in Kate's case, she's had this incredible experience of being taken while she was actually working on some material, because she had a wedding dress business, making them, and she was cutting some material one day, and she was suddenly taken out of herself and taken to the beginning of time, if you like, to the creation, and she was shown the whole business of creation, and it's quite incredible. She's done diagrams and stuff about all that kind of thing, and she's given talks on it in to a group of scientists in Bulgaria just about 3 or 4 years ago, and they were very seriously interested in what she had to say. And since that time, she has had numerous downloads of information, which she doesn't have to remember, because it's almost like they are recorded in her body. And it's Kate's intention to write a book about all of this, because she believes it's really important information about how things work. Our physics apparently is all wrong. Like for instance, she's told me that that creation is made up of many small blocks, very tiny blocks, which contain various shapes that like triangles and squared cubes and circles and stuff like that. And as you move through creation, like as I'm moving my hand from this place here to here, the hand that started over here is not the same hand that ends up there. Because as it moves through those building blocks, it's constantly being recreated by those shapes in those building blocks as it moves across. And as we're continually in movement, because we're on a moving planet, everything is being recreated instantaneously all the time. Oh, it's mind-boggling stuff. But well, there's another book I shall be helping her with in due course.
It's almost like, it sounds like getting back to our animation of computers and things.
Oh, yeah.
In a sense, because what they talk about in animation, I know a little bit about it, being an artist and studying a little bit of it, is they call keyframes of animation. So with computers, like you just said, a hand, they get a computer to create a hand there.
Yeah.
And then they also get a computer to create a hand over there, say, doing a gripping action. But the computer will work out the whole sense of different in-between frames, which used to be hand-drawn by Walt Disney's animators, to get to that last stage. So you got keyframes is that one, and then that one, and then you got the in-between stages. And in a sense, the animation is almost replicating what we're talking about.
It's like we're living in a matrix, essentially.
And Andy says this all the time, don't you, Andy?
Yeah, exactly. It's all code. And I wonder if these little implants are actually RAM upgrades and drive upgrades. You know?
Well, I think they are. I think they're to do with my health and keeping me in good nick as much as possible. And because I'll be 71 in about 3 weeks' time.
Wow.
And I'm doing pretty well. So I think they're keeping me going, because I do feel that, people like ourselves are going to be needed in the not too distant future, because of everything that's happened over the last 3 years and more. It's a bit of a sensitive subject. I'm sure you have to be very careful.
We know what you're talking about, and in fact, we can kind of venture into those territories a little bit, because we did speak to brother and sister mediumship duo. Back in the summer. Jane and Mark Hartshorn, brother and sister. Jane is an excellent medium. She's given my girlfriend and I readings and things. And I've been to her psychic developing circles in this area. Very nice lady, very talented and stuff like that. But when I went to a psychic developing circle, at the end of it, I said, "Oh, would you be interested in being on our Paranormal Peep show at some point, talking about this kind of stuff, psychic, life after death?" She goes, "Oh," she sounded disappointed. She goes, "I'd really want to talk about all that C word stuff." And I said, "Okay," I said, "I'll do a deal with you." We'll do part 1, talking about life after death and medium, and then part 2, we'll go right down the rabbit hole with that sort of stuff. But I said, hopefully we'll still be on air on YouTube. But we had to talk in a kind of coded lingo, so this artificial intelligence be a little bit clueless about what we're talking about. So we talked about ouchie fouchies.
Ouchie fouchies, yes.
And those kind of things. So we can talk a little bit about that anyway. Getting back to the Arcturians. Now, I've heard of Nordics, I've heard of Therians, I've heard of the Pleiadians. What are the Arcturians exactly?
Well, I wish I knew. They're tall, slim, very fine features.
They're not blue.
They're blue. They're blue.
They're aliens, huh?
It's the Avatar thing.
They're blue in colour.
Do you know? I do wonder sometimes if movies like Avatar are almost like trying to put into the public consciousness, kind of like what's really going on.
I think so. Yep.
Because you just described the Avatar type creatures, really, haven't you?
Essentially.
Yeah.
For sure. I just tell you again about Mary Hensley. They took her to South America to see this plant, which would help her with her tummy problems, which it did. And then they took her, I think, to Africa, to a very poor village there. And there was a man there who was obviously riddled with illness and drugged up to the eyeballs. And he was on the floor in a mess, totally scruffy, and the Arcturians picked him up, but I don't think they could see him. He couldn't see them, and nobody else there could see them either. But so they picked him up and they stood him on some material which like blotting paper, and then they dropped some liquid into his mouth, and almost immediately his eyes started to clear from being like yellow and bloodshot and horrible. They cleared to go white, and all this horrible black stuff came out of his feet and went into this blotting paper. And so I think they were just showing her with their capabilities, what they can do. So, but just going back to the Matrix again thing for a moment. I did tell you, I think in the last interview we did, about my eyesight being altered.
Right. Remind us of that. That's interesting.
Okay. Well, let me just start by. I've recently been doing a lot of research into previous civilizations. It's quite obvious that there was an advanced civilization on this planet before the last ice age. And some of the things I've been interested in is a place called Gunung Padang in Indonesia, where there's this huge pyramid which has been discovered and lost and discovered and lost, and until an archaeologist or a geologist discovered it again, and he got the president of the country interested, and the dig was funded for 2 terms of the president's office. And what they found was that the base layers go back to about, I think they said 26,000 years ago.
Wow.
Okay. So, and the end of the ice age probably was about 12,000 years ago, 11,500 years ago. Obviously there was a civilization way back then, but interesting that all the other archaeologists in the country that were vociferous about this were saying, well, it can't possibly be. There was nobody before the ice age, so it can't be. Therefore, it isn't. And this can't be, so it isn't thing is something that I've come across throughout my life with regard to the ET stuff. Now, anyway, after that president left office, another guy was brought in, and he immediately stopped all work on the pyramid and banned the main guy from doing any work there at all. And so you must ask, why the heck would that happen? And I think it's because that new president was put there by the New World Order people, the people who don't want us to have any understanding that we belong to a much older culture, older civilization. Our history goes back, many, many thousands of years. And when people talk about, why are there no real artifacts from those periods of time? One of my greatest teachers is a guy called Randall Carlson, and I would highly recommend anybody to look him up on YouTube. and he was saying that the first modern humans were found about 160,000 years ago. And in that intervening period of time, up to the present day, there have been 10, no less than, I think it's 10, civilization-ending events, like, like comet impacts, super volcanoes going off, all that kind of stuff. And so it's no wonder that there's not much evidence. Most of it's buried under mud or under the sea, But anyway, so it can't be, so it isn't, is the thing. So just going back to my own childhood, because I was having a lot of UFO and ET interactions, my parents weren't really interested, even though my mum finally owned up later on in her life that it'd been happening to her all her life as well.
Right.
But so my Uncle Fred was my saviour, if you like. He was the one person. He'd been in the Navy in the Second World War in the Mediterranean on board a destroyer, and so he was interested in the stars and all that kind of thing. So I could talk to him about some of my stuff, but the one thing that he couldn't get his head round was the fact that the speed of light is calculated at about 186,000 miles per second. And so he said, well, that's the speed of light, and nothing can go faster than that. And the distances are so great, so they can't possibly be here.
Yeah.
So
my uncle feels the same way, actually.
Yeah.
And I
must
always
be a thing
say,
with uncles.
yeah, it must be. Yeah.
he's very kind of he's very skeptical, and he's very mathematically inclined.
Yeah.
And I say to him, you're thinking in the Newtonian 3D, 2D sense of things. Think dimensionally, but you won't have it. He hasn't got any concept that things might be multidimensional.
But this is another perfect case of it can't be.
So it isn't.
Isn't.
Neil, we've interviewed people with the Smithsonian or worked with the Smithsonian Institute, and basically if they get an artifact that doesn't fit the current narrative, it just gets locked in a drawer and shut away, like the giant skeletons and things like that.
Right, giant skeletons in the Smithsonian, hidden away.
Yeah.
It's only a few people know about, and fortunately we've been privy to interview some of the guys researching it, so that's how we know about that.
Yeah.
Sure.
And it's a case of if it doesn't fit our little pattern of how we think it is, shut it away and don't look at it.
What the people in control are trying to do is to keep us thinking small.
Yeah.
They don't want us to know that we've got an illustrious history going back many thousands of years.
Yeah.
We've been dumbed down all the time, aren't we?
Oh, yeah.
But just going on, so that's my Uncle Fred. It can't be, so it isn't. So then, I don't know, maybe 20 years or so ago, I had this episode where I woke up one morning and my eyes had been changed so that everything I looked at had a diamond-shaped mesh on it. So the walls, the ceiling, even the porcelain of the toilet had this diamond-shaped mesh. It was just as if somebody had taken a thick-tipped black felt-tip pen and drawn a diamond and then drawn another diamond and made a mesh of that over everything.
What do you think that was about?
Well, I think it was trying to show me that our reality is not what we think it is. It's a bit like the holodeck, actually.
Yeah. Well, as you described that, what's come to mind to me is like these 3D software creation programs. There's things like Maya, 3D Studio, Max, that's what they're called in the trade. When they're building up a 3D scene, they literally build it up, like you say, like a almost like if you think back to the early films like Tron, when this technology was coming on board.
Yeah.
They would have this wire mesh basic built up on 3D on the computer.
Yeah.
Once they were happy with it and you could maneuver around this wire mesh scenario, then they would fill it in with all their solid texturing, if you like,
Yeah.
That's where your render farms that we spoke about earlier would come in and do that overnight rendering to build it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And the thing was, it didn't just come and go. I had it for 2 weeks.
Wow.
I was like that for 2 weeks.
How did you operate?
Quite honestly, look, I was kind of used to strange things. So that aspect of the strangeness of it didn't bother me. I knew that I was being shown something. That this was not a random event. This was part of my education. Okay. So, yeah, 2 weeks. And so naturally I shared this with my Uncle Fred. And I was really very disappointed, because I don't think he could really take it on board. It can't be, so it isn't. And I was very, very upset about it because, at the time, 20 years ago, I mean, I'd been married 20 years by that time, and life was very difficult at home, as it is with a lot of people who are contactees, where the rest of the family doesn't share in it, and as you're having to try to make sense of it yourself on your own. It's a very difficult situation, and it's no wonder that so many marriages amongst people like ourselves break up, because it's bloody hard. I'll tell you, really, really is, because it creates all sorts of rifts in the family. Because to be honest with you, I was obsessed by it because I wanted to find some answers. I wanted to know what are they doing to me? When you get levitated in bed, or you get bloody punctures or triangles put on your body, or you're in a craft, and then as you're being brought back down, you're in some kind of a machine which makes an incredible buzzing sound, which vibrates every atom of your body, so that I guess that's how they can move you through solid material.
Yeah. That's
happened to me. So anyway, just going back to Uncle Fred for a second. So I was very, very upset, very disappointed about that. So then after 2 weeks, it went and my eyesight returned to normal. It didn't impair my vision in any way, by the way. It was just there. It wasn't in between me and the wall. It was actually on the wall. It was part of the wall. So a couple of days after it had left me, I went down to see my uncle again, and he was in a right state. I said, "What the hell's wrong, Uncle?" He said, "I've got to make an appointment with the doctor." I said, "What's up?" He said, "Everything I look at's got a diamond-shaped mesh on it."
Crikey.
Yeah. And I said to him, "Well, don't you remember I told you this is what they've done to me?
Yeah.
And, don't worry, it's going to be okay. Give it a couple of weeks and it'll go and you'll be fine." And that is, of course, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
But the important aspect of that is that my Uncle Fred was not really connected with the ETs except through me. And they did that to him in order to help me to convince him that what I was saying was the truth, and they better believe me, that he'd better believe me. So they have done this before, and they did the same thing again with him. I don't know, probably about 5 or 6 years later. My uncle lived in a bungalow in Siddington near Macclesfield, and it was in a row of old people's bungalows.
Yeah.
And there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bungalows all in a row, all together. Okay. Now they had a single electricity supply, which ran up the back of the bungalows, a single thick cable, and each bungalow had a spur line going from that cable into the bungalow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now my uncle lived in the middle bungalow.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So one evening in, I think it was early November, Uncle Fred and Auntie Ivy were watching the television, and all of a sudden they noticed at the window there were faces at the window looking in, and it was Arnie and Ruth from the number one, the first bungalow, and they couldn't believe it because all the electricity to all the other bungalows had gone off. But theirs was still on.
No.
And they'd even got they not only had the telly on, they had a little electric fire going as well.
Oh my God.
And so and that stayed on for almost an hour before it faded out. But that is a complete impossibility because all 5 bungalows were being supplied with the same power. All the others had gone. But it's all part of what I keep trying to get across to you is that I have help. You know, I'm looked after.
Yeah.
And never more so than this summer when I went down to Wales. That's another story. Yes.
All right. I'll say what, if we save that story for part 2, because we're coming up to our break now.
Right.
I'll just say quickly before our break that I mentioned to you before we started our recording that I rewatched part of our first interview with you, and you mentioned your experience with Ganesh, this Indian god type figure. Someone said they saw him standing near you, which was interesting. Yes, that's it.
The elephant.
Now, I think you was out the room, Andy, at this point. But what happened when I was doing some mediumistic work during the summer? One of the people in the audience came up to me and she said, whilst you were doing this mediumship demonstration, I saw Ganesh standing in front of you.
Yeah.
And I had to sort of think, now I've heard that name before. I said, is that an Indian god or something? She goes, yeah. I said, with an elephant head? She goes, yeah. So I was thinking, oh, that's interesting. And I was thinking, why on earth would I have this Ganesh fellow standing in front of me? So did you get an explanation for your reason why Ganesh had appeared with you?
Well, apparently he was very interested in what I was saying.
Right.
I was showing my crop circle material actually to a couple of friends of David's, and he was apparently he wasn't the only person that was there. There were 1 or 2 other spirit people who were also interested in what I was saying.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, I did look into Ganesh, and he's a bringer of good luck and wealth, or something like, or favourable circumstances, something like that. I read up on it, so I thought, interesting, because I don't really have an interest in the Indian gods and goddesses sort of culture myself. So,
well, I'm quite sure that he visited me when I was 5 years old.
Yeah, I remember saying you thought you saw this Indian elephant. African elephant.
African, I know it's supposed to be associated with India.
Yeah,
I can only say what it was to me, and this was an African elephant, but it was an elephant, and it was a bull elephant, and it was powerful beyond words.
And you was in your bed at the time?
I was in bed, and this huge elephant's head was there, just in the corner of the room, the bottom of the bed. And swaying from side to side, the big tusks, gleaming white tusks were going side to side. I was scared stiff, absolutely scared to death. I managed to finally croak some shouts out because I couldn't speak. I was so afraid.
Yeah.
And my mum came and she stood in the door and she didn't come in. And I looked at my mum and I looked at the elephant and I looked back at my mum and looked back at the elephant and I thought, Mum's definitely there, so the elephant's definitely there. I'm not imagining this thing, you know. So I know he visited. It wasn't a nightmare. I can guarantee you that it was a visit.
Now it's interesting because back in the summer again, 2022 last year, we interviewed Tony Toppin. Is that his name?
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
he wrote about in his book, because I read his book for him, that he experienced an elephant face coming out the wall, and he was in his cot. I think he was like 2 years old at the time.
Right.
So I thought when you mentioned that, I was thinking, that's interesting.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Right. Don't know why you got elephants visiting kids.
Well, to be honest with you, I think it's who we've been in past lives.
Yeah.
It's not just who we are in this life. That's for sure. And there's lots of very circumstantial, I'll admit, evidence that points in the direction that I've been connected with religious figures in the past, going back to the time of Jesus.
Wow.
I've been told that, I was actually James,
Right.
Jesus's brother.
Wow.
And since being a small boy, I always had this powerful feeling that Jesus was my brother, not somebody to be worshipped, somebody to be respected, absolutely.
Yeah.
But not to be worshipped, because he's my brother. So why the heck would I worship him? And there's been a lot of things happening since then, and that UFO sighting and thing that happened to me this summer is also connected with that. So,
right. We'll have to talk about that one after the break, I think.
Okay. So we'll take a break here now on the Paranormal Peep Show. We're talking to Robert Hulse, talking about ET, UFO experiences and Indian gods and that kind of stuff. It's all getting very strange, but I'm sure it's going to get stranger in part 2. So stay tuned for the Paranormal Peep Show on the Paranormal UK Radio Network.
Today's the best day of my life! Woohoo! Listening to the Paranormal UK Radio Network.
Join Andy and Neil every month on the Paranormal Peep Show, part of the Paranormal UK Radio Network, for fun, frolics and lots of information about weird stuff, UFOs, ghosts and things that go bump in the night and everything associated with them. Fascinating guests, fascinating talk, fascinating information.
Hi, welcome back to the Paranormal Peep Show on the Paranormal UK Radio Network with myself, Neil Geddesward, and Andy Champlin. And our guest once more is Robert Hulse, who joined us last year talking about his ET experiences, I guess. And this is a continuation of that story, along with people that he's met along the way. Now, just before the break, Robert, you alluded to some sort of trip to Wales, didn't you? So what was that about?
Yeah, well, this summer I went down to stay in South Wales with my friends, and we on one particular day we went to a place called Tinkins Wood Burial Chamber, which is just near Cardiff, and it's the capstone of the burial chamber is the biggest in Wales. It's probably the biggest in this country. Might even be the biggest in Europe. It weighs about 40 tons, I think, something like that. So as we were walking up the field towards this thing, to the enclosure, I could feel the energy as I was walking up the field. But that might have had something to do with the power lines that were running parallel to us up the other side of the field. Anyway, when we got inside the enclosure, which is all fenced off, this thing, and then you go inside the enclosure and there's information boards there telling you all about this place. And
how old is it, quickly, just roughly?
Oh, crikey. It's probably 4,500 years old, something like that.
Neolithic age, what they call it, Neolithic.
Yeah, absolutely. And so there's all the information about it. And as we went in, I could see there were a few people in there already. And it turned out that there was a group of Americans, and there might have been half a dozen of them. And there were also 3 other people who were locals, a man and his wife, and a friend of theirs. So, David and myself and David's wife, we sort of merged in with these people, and as we do, we get talking to them, and very soon the Americans left, which left us with these other local people. And David was talking to the husband. I was talking to the wife of this man, and she turned out to be an abductee, contactee. And it actually turned out that she knew my friend Gary from Australia,
Oh, crikey.
who'd visited the area. So I went near to the burial chamber, and I didn't feel comfortable. I thought there's something not right here. There's something not lurking in there. It's something that's not good. Bad energy, bad spirit, or something like that.
Bad woo-woo.
Absolutely. Yeah, bad woo-woo. That's right. So I didn't go inside the chamber. I very purposely stayed outside it and walked all the way around and we're chatting. And now, while I'm doing that, David notices that there's a very tall man following me everywhere I went. He was a tall man. He was dressed in a pink shirt, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And David assumed that it was somebody that he hadn't noticed as we came into the area, and that I'd befriended him, So he walked round. He stuck to me like glue, this fella, apparently. And bear in mind, I couldn't see him. But I was... So anyway, we were talking for, I don't know, a good half an hour, maybe 3/4 of an hour. This man's following me around everywhere. And towards the end, Dave says, I'd love to get a photograph of us all, so that, as a memory. So he lined us up and took a photograph. And then he said, I'd like to be in the photograph myself. So the husband of the couple said, volunteered to go and take a photograph. So Dave walked up and got into the lineup, and this tall guy in the pink shirt is still standing behind me, and Dave looks across to him and sort of smiles at him and nods at him, acknowledges him, and the guy does the same back to Dave, and then the photograph gets taken, and that's it as far as we're concerned. But then then we say goodbye to our new found friends that we've made there. And before we leave the enclosure, Dave turns to me and he said, so who's the guy in the tall guy in the pink shirt that was with you all the way around? And I looked at Linda, his wife, and she looked back at me, and we shook our heads because we never saw anybody. and Dave, who's used to seeing spirit so clearly, he just couldn't believe it. It was like if he'd had a hat on his head, he would have thrown it to the ground and said, "That's ridiculous," And in fact, he felt like going back and having a look round because he didn't believe us,
So the shirt presumably was like a modern shirt, was it? A pink shirt?
Yeah. It was the shirt that it was obviously. First of all, let me say, he's not a spirit. He's a being.
A being.
He's from a craft.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. And he's there to protect me. Because I found out later that indeed there was something nasty in the burial chamber.
Oh.
And its intention was to connect with me. And he arrived in order to
stop it
from happening.
So do you know what the being was and what the intention was?
I know who he was.
Oh, okay. Who was he?
Well, let me just carry on just to say
okay.
that in the first photograph that Dave took of us, the lineup, you can see behind my head that there's an area of disturbance. The overhead power lines are in the field going across behind my head, if you like. And in the one photograph that Dave took, they're obscured by something behind me. Okay. In the second photograph that the husband of the lady took, they're not obscured. So he obviously was not there anymore. Okay. So, and I have those photographs. Now, so as we're just about to leave the enclosure, Dave decided he'd like to take a photograph of the sign for Tinkins Wood. So he took a photograph of it, but he also got some of the trees and a little bit of the sky in the photograph. And when we examine the photograph carefully, we see there's a UFO in the photograph. So that's what he arrived in.
Wow.
What did it look like? Was it classical silver disc shape or?
No, you can't see that. It's too small. You can't really say that. But it is a sort of fairly classical shape. Yes. Yeah, his his name is T-Day.
T-Day.
Yeah, T-E-E-D-E-H.
Right. Okay.
And he was the same guy who came to my talk in Adelaide that I probably mentioned in the last interview we did. At the end of the talk, he came up to me and exchanged his energy with me.
Right.
And then embraced me.
Right.
And
you actually saw him then?
Oh, yeah.
In Adelaide?
Oh, yeah.
As a tall person?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And you thought he was a normal person, but just tall?
No.
No, I see. Okay.
I knew he was not a normal person. Right. No. He looked to be in his 30s, I would say. Very athletic, bald, no hair. He waited until everybody had sort of thanked me for giving the talk and giving me one or two of their own stories. And he told me that I was correct about the crop circles.
Right.
Because I'd been asked during the talk what I thought the purpose of the crop circles was. And I said that I believed they were a means of infusing energy into the ley line energy grid system of the planet.
Right.
Okay, which I'm absolutely certain is essential for all life on Earth. It invigorates all life. And he said to me, very few words, but he said, "You're right about the purpose of the crop circles, and the different patterns allow for different frequencies of energy to be infused."
Right. Now, when he spoke to you, was this telepathically or
no? Vocally.
So did he have an English accent, Australian accent?
He didn't have any accent really at all.
Right.
No, he didn't. And we knew that who we were, kind of thing. I mean, there was another guy in the room who was a ex-CIA guy, if there is such a thing.
Yeah.
And he worked for NASA in Cheyenne Mountain, this fella. And I telepathically told my friend that, do not need to worry. I will never, ever give you up or indicate to anybody who you are. This is between the two of us, And it turns out that he was my brother in a past incarnation.
Right.
And he calls me little brother. I have a friend in America who also has contact with him and another very important person that we all could think of, JC.
Yeah.
Who's also his brother.
Right.
And I know it's mind-boggling. I know it sounds completely crazy, but there's all sorts of things that have happened to me in my life. Like, one night, I don't know, 20 years or so ago, I looked up. I was lying in bed. My wife was asleep at the side of me. I looked up, and there was Jesus. I am sure, hovering above me, horizontally.
Yeah.
Naked, as far as I could tell.
Yeah.
But that made no difference whatsoever. And I floated up out of my body and merged completely with him.
Right.
And the next thing I knew, it was morning.
Mm.
And I got up and I had my shower and got dressed and everything. But I stood by the side of the bed. I can remember it clearly. I was completely knackered. It was as if I hadn't slept for a week. So something really, really big had happened that night. So I had that connection there with him. And, I've had a message from him through my friend in America. And, I said that I felt uncomfortable about, giving myself this pedigree, if you like, this past,
Yeah.
Because I like to think of myself as just a normal guy, just like everybody else. And indeed I am.
Yeah.
But the message I got back from him was never think less of yourself than you do of your creator. Nearly brought me to tears, quite frankly. I mean, just it's quite incredible. And it seems that I've been connected with other ecclesiastical people, in the past. Somebody suggested to me that I should ask who my guardian angel was. And that's something that I'd never even thought about, frankly. And about, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I went to bed and just on a whim almost, I just said, please tell me who my guardian angel is. And instantly, the name Bede came to
Bede.
Bede, the Venerable Bede.
Right.
The historian of English history who lived in Jarrow.
Right.
Where
the Jarrow marchers.
Absolutely. They actually marched from his church.
Right.
Yeah. And that's in the late 7th century when Bede was alive.
Right.
And he wrote this English history. And again, so I have this connection. If he is my guardian angel, and I have no reason to doubt it, because I hadn't thought about him for, I don't know, 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to that, obviously I'd heard of Bede.
Yeah.
It never dawned on me for a second that, that he would be. But I am interested in history, and also seem to have this, this connection with people from religion in the past, even though I'm not religious at all.
Yeah.
What did the Jesus figure look like when you saw him above your bed in terms of like skin color and facially and hair?
I don't know. It just seemed like a normal person. It's a funny thing that you just knew it was him. It's not like this happened probably it might be 20 years ago, and this is before I had any of these strange experiences or any of these inklings. I mean, around about the same time, I remember driving home from work one lunchtime. I was coming home here to have a bite to eat, and as I was driving past the church, and I didn't realize I was passing the church at the time, it was only afterwards, the voice spoke to me as clear as a bell, and the voice said, "Love is the answer." And that's all this voice said, not another word. But it was, I nearly crashed the car. It was just unbelievable, So, I do have that connection. And, this painting that I showed you earlier on.
Yes,
Neil.
the painting, yeah.
This is supposed to represent energy coming up from the ground, which is the life force. It's the same thing I was talking about before with the crop circles and the ley line. Yeah, that energy. Well, there's a story behind this one because it was painted by my friend David.
Right.
And but it was painted at the behest of a saint. by the name of Gildas.
Gildas, right.
Yeah. Now, I can assure you that neither David or I knew anything about Gildas at the time, but Gildas came to Dave, was sat in his armchair in the living room, and he came to him and said, I'd like you to paint a picture for me. The thing is that we'd been down to, it's a famous place. It's not Lantony. It's down in South Wales. It's by the coast, and there's a famous church there, which was connected with Gildas, and we'd just been there, and so Gildas came to him and said, "Would you mind doing a painting for me?" So Dave said, "I'm a bit tired now, but oh, please, because we've seen your other work that you've done, and because most of Dave's paintings are spirit. They're all they're channeled, I suppose you could say, But anyway, so Dave went upstairs to get a canvas, and he picked one up off the floor, and Gildas said, "No, I don't want that one. I want this one." So Gildas picked this canvas up off the floor and handed it to Dave. And when he put it on the table, because he paints on the table, he put it down sort of horizontally.
Landscape version.
Yeah. But Gildas said, "No, I don't want it like that. I want it upright."
Vertical.
Like vertical.
Portrait, yeah.
Yeah, portrait. And so Dave hardly remembers doing any of the painting because he's, they take over. And Gildas said, "I'm in the painting somewhere." Well, I found him, and he's up there somewhere. And I can see him quite clearly. And so, again, there's a connection. I had to have this painting, had to have it. So we got Bede, we got Gildas, and then, of course, I did mention earlier about the Ouroboros appearing above my head in December 2012 at Glastonbury Tor.
Yes.
In a photograph Dave took of me at the top of the Tor. It was the first time I'd ever been up there. And in the sky, behind me, is an Ouroboros, which is the serpent eating its tail. And I'm quite sure there are two beings above it as well, which are indistinct, but I'm sure they're there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the serpent eating its tail is also a sign of infinity, isn't it? Even if it's not the actual circle of the.
It is, and it's all about reincarnation, continuity of life, and Dave got a message from them, and they said that this was something that they would rarely do, but in my case, they thought it was important, and that this was the key to my understanding. Okay. Now, bear in mind that James, the brother of Jesus, visited Glastonbury with Jesus' son, who was also called Jesus. Okay. Jesus and Mary Magdalene had children. And James is also called Joseph of Arimathea.
Yeah, I've heard of that. He was
Okay, well,
suppose he brought the staff or something, or
yeah, that's well, Joseph of Arimathea is a title.
yeah,
Really, it's not really a name; it's a title. But it was James, and he's supposed to have died there and is buried there, and he's supposed to have built the first above ground Christian church in the world at Glastonbury. And so, if he's buried there and I was him, no wonder this appeared to in the sky behind me, saying it was the key to my understanding.
Right.
Okay.
It completed that circle. In a sense.
Absolutely. And then there's more to it than that, because it might have been the following night. I'd come home to Macclesfield at that time from South Wales, and David was taken in a vision, or whatever you like to call it, back to Glastonbury to look at that photograph, to look at that scene with the Ouroboros in the sky. And the person that took him was a guy called Saint Abib. Okay, now I'd never heard of Saint Abib, and neither had David. And I reckon very few people have heard of Saint Abib. But the thing is, Saint Abib said, "You've missed something." In the photograph, he was really very insistent. Well, what I think what he was really trying to say was that Abib is another incarnation of me.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I say that is because David has had many connections, if you like, with Apollo.
Yeah.
The god Apollo,
Mm-hmm.
Greek god, and the only person in the literature that Saint Abib is ever mentioned with is his great friend Saint Apollo. So we have these connections going on all through, and then even later in life, later on through the centuries, there's a guy called Meister Eckhart from Germany, I think, who was an important figure in the Catholic Church, who got into trouble with him. Actually, the Inquisition were after him towards the end of his life, and but he died before they could torture him to death, probably.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. But there's a portrait of him, and if I put his clothes on, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between us.
Oh,
and again, that's something else I can show you. You know.
yeah.
Yeah, and you won't have any doubt about it. So I don't know what the heck it all means. I mean, it's special. And I do have these connections. I'm certain of it now. But it's about who we are today. All of us.
Yeah.
And what we're doing here on the planet at this time. And we're all doing our job in the best way that we can to bring light and truth, to this crazy world.
So getting back to David then, so
Right.
if we just remind listeners, if we go back to our first episode, we spoke about your friend, but we didn't know his name as David then, but
No.
you've now decided that you're...
Yeah, that's okay.
Birthday.
David's fine.
And it's okay to say that he was a bus driver.
Yeah.
So that was his profession. Now, he had the very interesting experience of encountering these three tall beings in his living room one night.
That's right. Yeah.
Where they, one of them was called Barnabas.
Yeah.
And he said, things are going to get rough, basically.
Yeah.
Could you just recount that? I'll tell you what, I've just got to plug my battery in.
Okay.
Because I'm getting a warning now and I don't want to come out halfway through.
No,
If you could just recount that for our listeners,
okay.
and then I'll rejoin you. So if you bear with me, carry on.
Okay. So David was in bed. It was nighttime, and he was woken up by a spirit or something, and he was told that he had to go downstairs to the living room. And Dave felt uneasy about it, which is unusual for him because he's used to seeing spirits. It's everyday occurrence, no problem. But he felt a bit apprehensive. But this person insisted. So Dave got out of bed, put his dressing gown on, and as he's walking down the stairs, he notices there's a light coming from inside the living room because the door is slightly ajar. And he thought perhaps that he might have left the Venetian blinds open because the road is outside and the light's shining through the window at night, But as he walked into the room, he found that the blinds were shut and the light was coming from these three tall, bearded men. who were in the living room, and the tallest of them stood by the fireplace. He had a staff, a long beard, and the other two were on the settee, and they gestured to Dave to sit in the armchair, which he did, and then they told him that he wasn't to get too emotionally involved in what was going to happen here on the planet, because he couldn't do anything about it, and it was going to be okay, but things were going to get really bad before they got better. But they will get better, because he's a Welshman, and they're very emotional, and they feel things very deeply, and he feels deeply for his fellow man, and as we all do, and that's part of the problem, isn't it? That we see our friends, having the in the arm, and they're either becoming ill or whatever. Anyway, so that's the story, really. And then one of them appeared to him again one morning when he went downstairs, came through the door and threw his cloak on him, and just to reassure him, don't worry, it's going to be okay, But I can just tell you now, because he's told me it's okay, that about I don't know, a month, 6 weeks ago, he went downstairs about 6 o'clock in the morning to make a cup of tea and some toast. And he was in the kitchen, and he looked through the French windows of the French, opening doors, and there was a UFO in the sky, darting about, zigzagging around. So he quickly rushed into the living room, got his phone, opened the doors, and took one photograph. And I have his permission to send you that photograph, so I will do that. And you will see that it's a craft, clear as day, and there are three distinct beams of light coming down from it. And he said that when he first saw it, that the lights were even more distinct, and immediately he got the photograph, it just zipped off, and that was it. It was gone. But that's only about, I don't know, a month, 6 weeks ago.
So this the beings that appeared in his room, I think you said last time it's called Barnabas.
Yeah, I was told it was Barnabas by another person who is a contactee as well.
Right.
Who when I described this person to her, she knew who it was, because she'd actually met him on board a craft before. He's a very distinguished, not like a librarian, but a keeper of records, and
like a clerk.
Well, a lot
on UFO terms.
He's a big cheese up there. Yes, absolutely. So
So presumably the craft that Dave saw through his kitchen window, that might have been something to do with Barnabas, maybe.
I don't think so.
No?
Of course, it might have been, but the thing is, he's had so many encounters with the ETs.
Yeah,
and different ones. It could be anywhere. I mean, his location where he is, it's like, I don't know, Grand Central Station for UFOs and ETs.
UFO hotspot.
Oh, it absolutely.
What I find fascinating is that some of these people, right? You mentioned Kate at the very beginning, and then David here now with his fantastic story of Barnabas and the three tall beings. Is that I remember a conversation with our good friend Philip Kinsella, who did a reading for a gentleman some years ago, but it was a psychic medium. And this gentleman came to see him, and Philip gave him a reading, and I understood it went very well. But this guy sort of explained to him, after the reading was over, that he was one of the people that visited the skull experiment. some years earlier, back in the 90s, early 90s, I think.
I remember it,
which is in the village of Skull, for people that don't know, is where they did some psychic experiments over a 5-year period in their basement in the house. Robin Foyles, I think his name was one of the people that partook in it. He wasn't one of the mediums, but he was kind of one of the people that witnessed it.
Yeah, Rupert Sheldrake was another.
And and they had distinguished people coming in and visit for a period of 5 years. Magicians couldn't work out how it was happening, all this phenomenon was happening and stuff. And this guy that visited Philip Kinsella was one of these witnesses, not famous, but just a witness to some of the phenomena that occurred there. And one of the things he said to Philip, he said, I'm a very successful businessman, lots of money, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
He said, I've witnessed this incredible stuff that is just beyond belief. He said, how can I ever go back to a normal life? Being normal, quotes, making money and whatever it is. After you've witnessed the incredible things.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what answer Philip gave to him, but it just reminded me of people like Kate and David witnessing these incredible things like the tall beings in the house. How can you go back to a job where you're an everyday bus driver, for instance?
I tell you what, it's not easy. I
don't think it would be.
And while he was doing that job, he had to be very careful who he spoke to, because there are not many people that it's troubling. That's the thing, really. It troubles people because it disturbs their equilibrium. Yeah. I mean, we're kind of used to it, now. And I think that's all part of some of the experiences that I've had with the ETs. It's kind of a toughening up experience because there's no point being afraid of them, because there's no way you're going to be able to help anybody else if you're scared stiff of them yourself, And I do believe that that's probably going to be part of my job in the future. I've always known from being a boy that had a job to do here, and it wasn't having a successful business, getting married, having children, grandchildren, love them as much as I do. It was something else that is yet to come. And I believe that this crisis that we've been going through here and whatever's going to happen afterwards, this is when our work really starts. That's what I believe, because they're going to need, some old heads around, and other people with abilities like yourselves, to reassure them, reassure them first and foremost that life doesn't end when you die, because that's a big problem, isn't it? With so many people, they're afraid.
Yeah. They're taking life from the totally wrong perspective, particularly in the Western world. I think other parts of the world, like the Far East generally, are much more in tune with this kind of stuff. Like the Far East, they talk about reincarnation quite a lot.
Yeah.
Spirits and things like that. They seem to take that as every day. And I know that they have the Day of the Dead kind of festivals in South America and that kind of stuff, Brazil, maybe, or whatever. So it's only in the very kind of industrialized West that we kind of have this screwed up vision of the world, and the ones that are throttling each other's throats, figuratively speaking, all the time, with nuclear weapons and all sorts of things,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, can I just mention in passing? I've got a very dear friend in Canada, Beata, and she was the leading researcher in Canada for the crop circles for many years, and that's how we got to know each other many years ago. And we've been the dearest of friends for many years now. And I speak to her nearly every day on Skype, which is a wonderful thing to be able to do that. But about 3 months ago, I think, she had an encounter in the bedroom with Top Hat Man.
Ooh.
Now, I don't know whether you've come across Top Hat Man before.
We've heard of Hat Man.
Yeah, Hat Man's negative. Is Top Hat Man positive?
No. It's negative, all right.
Oh, it is. Oh, okay.
Yeah, Hat Man. It's the same thing.
Right.
But he just happened to be wearing a top hat.
Oh, he's moving with a fashion then.
Yeah, a top hat and a long coat, long tails on the coat that this guy had, and he entered the bedroom from who knows where, and he seemed to be at her, that he was looking around to try to find her, and as soon as she noticed him, bump, he knew that she was there. So she was paralyzed. She couldn't move, but his fingers seemed to come to points almost. And he got hold of her hands and actually physically lifted her up by the hands. And she summoned up, everything in her, and she just shouted out, "No," and he let go of her. And then she looked at him and she said, "Top that? Really, buddy? Is that the best you can do?" Okay. And then he went, But if you research it on the internet, you'll find that Hat Man is well known all over the world.
Usually it's a fedora hat, which is interesting.
Yeah?
Which is, well, when people talk about the Hat Man, it's usually kind of like a much shallower fedora type hat. I've never heard of a top hat being used.
Right. Well, he had a top hat. Yeah, for sure. And of course, she's had other experiences in her life. It's not a one-off.
I wonder what his intention was, what he was going to do.
Well, the thing was that she was about to go to Jordan, to Petra, to visit Petra, and she felt that she had a mission, that she had to be there. I think, she calls herself a magnetic spinner, and it's necessary for her to be there. Well, it seems as if there might be a connection with the jinn which are a lot in Jordan.
Right.
And maybe they were trying to frighten her out of going, but she's a force for good, a force for great good, So it is, isn't it? Yeah.
Has she seen it since, or is it literally just a one-off?
Just the once. Yeah.
Now, it's interesting that he appeared in the room and then literally had to look around to try and find out where she was, as if he kind of warped to there, was disorientated, and then had to get his bearings or something.
That's right. It wasn't until she really locked eyes on him that he noticed her.
Right, telepathically maybe they tuned in or something.
I think so. Yeah.
Wow, crikey, that must have really frightened the hell out of her, didn't
it? Yeah, but she's a warrior, like all of us, when it comes down to it, we're here for a job.
Now, getting back to the Barnabas story then, this visited David and he said things are going to get really bad.
Yeah.
I put that just at the beginning before we had a pandemic.
This was
alluding to that, I think.
Oh, yes, without a doubt. I mean, this happened around about, I think, April or May 2020. So, we were into it then, weren't we?
Yeah. And then, I mean, do you think we're over that now? I mean, they're talking about China having more issues now, and it's all like the sequels coming up, sort of thing.
Well, I mean, it's flu, for goodness sake. It's amazing how flu disappeared for 2 years and now it's making a bigger reappearance, isn't it? It's always been flu, I think, and it was always treatable, but they we've been had, haven't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Basically,
people fell for it. I mean, my dad, since we've last spoken, my dad was one of the strongest advocates for getting the medical intervention, should I say. As we were talking with Jane and Marker in our earlier show, we call it medical intervention, or the Ouchie.
Yeah.
And I can't remember how many he had now, but what happened is that my brother and his wife also had the medical intervention, and they got really ill, And my dad was saying, "Oh, you better get it because they're ill with it, and you don't want to get it, so you better have it too." And I said, "But how can it work then if they're ill with it?"
Yeah.
I said, "That doesn't make sense to me." But he was vouching on and pushing on, and he was going through the whole thing. Then my dad passed away, sadly, in April. 85 years of age. And he'd gone through all those medical interventions and passed away suddenly with a aortic aneurysm.
Yeah.
And I'd looked at the research, and there's an Austrian doctor that thinks that aneurysms were strongly linked to these medical interventions.
They most definitely are. Yeah.
I can tell you that I think it's the German either vice president or vice chancellor wants an official investigation into the jibbity jabbities.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that on GB News, you won't find this on any other mainstream. Like BBC won't cover it, ITV won't cover it, Channel 4 won't cover it. GB News will cover it. They're the only real honest mainstream news group out there.
Yeah.
Raw data has shown that serious adverse reactions, because if you talk to like what I call a poison peddler, they'll just say, "Oh, don't worry, an adverse reaction just means you get a sore arm or a sore arm." No. We're talking about serious adverse reactions. The odds are, based on raw data, 1 in 800.
Yeah.
Those are not good odds. You have more chance of getting a serious adverse reaction than a small win on a lottery or a premium bond win, or being struck by lightning or hit by a car, or blah, 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 blah. 1 in 800, it sounds like it should be okay, but it's really not good odds, 1 in 800. That's not good odds at all for a serious adverse reaction.
Well, those are the reported figures, but we know that the truth is probably 10 times worse than that.
This is it. Yeah.
I was listening to a Canadian doctor giving a speech to a crowd in Canada the other day, and he said that in the last 60 days they'd lost, meaning died, 80 doctors who'd had plenty of the jibby jabby between the ages of 20 and 55.
Okay.
80 doctors in 60 days.
That's almost like one a day, isn't it?
It's more than one a day.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this has got to be affecting our health service as well.
Because got officially on record, we've got 1,000 deaths a week that are excess deaths. That is to say, deaths that on average would not have happened pre-COVID. And this is not from COVID. This is 1,000 deaths of all causes that are going on extra.
And also, you got to bear in mind that that we should now be having less deaths.
Yes.
Because because there should be less people available to die.
Yeah.
Who were
vulnerable.
Exactly. Yeah. Sure.
Have you guys seen the number of sheer athletes and pop stars and all sorts of people, even producers like TV producers, dropping dead suddenly and unexpectedly?
Yeah.
And this seems to be the buzz phrase now for all deaths that are popping up in the news, suddenly and unexpectedly, and it happens again and again and again and again and again.
It does. You were talking about GB News earlier on, and I noticed Nigel Farage had an interview with the doctor this morning, and she was most scathing about the government and the way the whole thing has been handled, how completely against science it is, what they've done, that it was always eminently treatable.
Yeah.
And
it is not science to say the science is settled. The whole purpose of science is to question everything. If you're not questioning everything, then you're not being scientific. So there's no such thing as the science is settled.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I find it encouraging, to say the least, that there's a large number of people who are waking up.
Yeah.
In a medical profession.
Oh yeah, but they always have been, because what was happening even from the beginning of the COVID era, there were scientists speaking up, but they were just censored. And then it comes out with the Twitter files that Elon, bless him, I don't fully trust Elon, but what he's doing so far is amazing.
Yeah.
And the Twitter files, and he's really gone down the rabbit hole recently. And it turns out that the FBI and the American security services were going up behind our backs and saying, can you censor this person and censor that person, censor this information, put false information for that thing, fact checking on that thing. And everyone that was speaking out against what was going on was shut down.
Yeah.
That's communism. That's fascist, communist, Nazi, Soviet propaganda, basically. Given.
Yeah. But I say I'm encouraged.
Yeah.
By people like Robert Malone.
Oh yeah.
Coming out the other day with a group of doctors behind him, and I forget what the figures were, but it was something like, I don't know, they said about 90,000 doctors and scientists are now demanding that this be investigated thoroughly.
Absolutely. This is really encouraging. You'll love this one. I think it's the Florida governor. I think his name is Ron DeSantis.
It is, yes.
And he is putting together a grand jury to start legal proceedings for investigating Pfizer and the jibbity jabs.
Yeah.
If the SHIT hits the fan out there and it gets momentum, I would love to see. I tell you what, I don't want for Christmas. I don't want socks for Christmas. Next Christmas we're talking about.
No, yeah, I was going to say it's just that Christmas.
I want Anthony Fauci, Klaus Schwab, Bill Gates, and all the cabal who gave us this and gave us all the jibbity jabs. I want them in jail for life.
Absolutely, 100%. You want the key so you can throw it away, don't you?
Yes.
Maybe we should all give them all boosters. Then,
I would love. I would love Bill Gates to have as many boosters as he wants. He can have all of our boosters. Bill, knock yourself out. Have 10 boosters a day.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
That's not likely to happen, is it? Hey?
Yeah. That'd be an update and a half, wouldn't it? Blimey.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Now, so really, we're still going through this battle. Now, the next kind of leg of the battle is whether we can make it through the cure, as it were. I mean, that's the trouble. The cure is worse than the bloody illness.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's now proven by statistics that people who've had the more jabs people have, the more their immune system is impaired, and the more likely they are to get the C, and also the big C as well. Yeah, because it apparently it damages the ability of the T cells, which are our main defense against the big C, and these. I noticed a professor of oncology in London just the other day, Professor Dalgleish, I think his name is, he came out and said that he's noticing a tremendous increase in super aggressive cancers. Yeah. And it can only be linked to this, and he's demanding that that they be stopped immediately. I mean,
the authorities have got a problem in that if they, it's inevitable, they're going to have to acknowledge it. But if they do acknowledge that they got it wrong and they screwed it up, the consequences of people bringing action against them, I think that's their huge worry. That's their huge concern.
Yeah, well, I mean, thank goodness we've got at least one good MP in Parliament, Andrew Bridgen.
Andrew Bridgen, love him. Yeah.
Isn't he fantastic, hey?
Yeah, what is he, Conservative, Labour?
Yeah, Conservative, yeah. He's Conservative, but he's a good Conservative, you know? I'm conservative by nature. I believe in conserving the best about this country and our history and stuff, and our way of life, and our Christian values, because although I'm not religious at all, I do believe that if you live your life by the core Christian values, you can't really go wrong. And that really applies to a lot of religions, really, you know.
We're fighting so much on this planet because it's not just the jibbity jabs and the COVID. It is, as you say, it's what they want, the dark ones. I call them the dark ones. They want the complete and utter destruction of the human soul.
Yeah.
And the human body and the human mind. They are systematically trying to destroy our culture. They are calling masculinity toxic. They're calling testosterone. I heard somebody call testosterone a poison. I think that was a Hollywood producer called it a poison.
Yeah.
It's not a poison. And the thing is about like toxic masculinity, they say, being kind of like macho and brave and kind of, that causes wars and stuff, and that, causes aggression. Well, I'll tell you what it causes. It causes firemen to break down doors if you've got a burning building, and it causes police officers to go after murderers if there's an axe murder with an axe. You soon want the testosterone then, and that's when testosterone is good. But we've got this society where we're being attacked by chemicals in the sky, in the foods. We've got fluoridated water. We've got the New World Order, and they're trying to take down things and basically turn this entire world into a social credit score communist hellhole. We're just being attacked from every direction. It's just incredible the amount of destruction that's into this planet.
One of the main aims is very clearly depopulation.
Oh yeah,
that's clear. And depopulation is coming about from all sorts of directions, not least through the decline in sperm counts in men.
Oh yeah,
which I believe it was, I don't know, maybe 50 years ago, it was something like 70%, shall we say, and now it's below 40%. Which apparently is it's very hard to conceive children when you're below that threshold, you know. And so it's almost a miracle if a woman conceives these days.
So maybe this is connected then to the Georgia Guidestones destruction last year?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Which,
Sure.
for those people that are not aware, I mean, you know more about it than me, Andy, but oddly enough, I had a dream about these Georgia Guidestones, and I know nothing about them really. But in the dream, they were concrete things, and I can't remember, they were just smashed up or something. And then, like a week later, they bloody happened. You know?
Yeah.
Isn't that weird coincidence?
Yeah.
But these Georgia Guidestones have got something written about the population must be brought down to, is it
500 million?
Yeah.
Something small.
Yeah.
But no one knows much about them, where they came from.
No one knows who built them, who commissioned them. Some people say it was a prank or a joke, but they worked out that if it was a prank or a joke, it would have cost something like $250,000 to construct them and put them together. That's a quite expensive prank, but these are what I'll call the Illuminati, the New World Order, the global cabal. But what's interesting, Neil, is who smashed them and why.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you know about it, Robert?
Well, the thing is that it seems like it's part of a satanic ritual in that before they do these terrible things, they have to tell us what they're going to do. And in some way that's supposed to mean that we have given our consent to it.
Gets them off the hook or something.
Something in their weird minds.
On the lines of, if we don't do anything about it, then we've given our consent. That's their mindset.
Yeah, and they're doing that all the time, aren't they? You know, because they're not hiding their tracks, what they're doing. I mean, you know, the Klaus Schwabs of this world, you know, they tell you exactly what they're going to do, don't they?
Yeah.
You know?
One of the biggest dangers on this planet, one of the most evil men on this planet is Schwab.
Yes, for sure. But, you know, I say I'm still optimistic. I know we're going to win this battle. Absolutely know it. And I'm reminded of a French guy who was a very, very wealthy man who put an interview out on YouTube, I think. It might be about 3 or 4 years ago now. And he said that he had very, very powerful allies in this world, and they were going to turn it all around. That he did not want to do it through confrontation, with the bad guys, because the result of that would probably be war, and it would be even worse for us. So he's trying to do it, according to what he said, by persuasion, if you like, to persuade them, to persuade these people to come over to the light rather than stay in the dark side, you know. And I've just got a feeling that there are signs that is happening, you know, with people like Ron DeSantis, you know, Carrie Lake, is it in America, who's just lost this election in Arizona.
Yeah, that's it.
She's lost this election, which she won. You know, and there's some really tremendous people standing up now. You know, real beacons.
Yeah, I think the darkness have a problem in that people are waking up, and I'll tell you where to find it: the comment section of almost any social media.
Yeah.
So whenever you get kind of like what I would call kind of a mainstream news report or something flagging up in my timeline from like a mainstream source, whatever newspaper, whatever kind of media source, if it's something like, you know, COVID returns, we all need a jab, something.
Yeah.
Sometimes I've had Pfizer adverts and Bill Gates adverts. Have a look at the comments, and I guarantee almost 90%, 90 to 95% will be completely negative against that article and just trashing it. Even on a local level, I live in Hertfordshire, so we've got kind of like a Hertfordshire thing flagged up the other day saying, flu is up on the rise, we might need to start wearing masks again, from local kind of Hearts Live type group, and the comments were just nope, piss off.
Yeah,
you know.
Great.
Yeah.
It's a funny thing. I visited an aged aunt this afternoon. She's 98.
Wow.
But she's still got a marble, so that's good. And I said to her, because she's fully jabbed up, you know, and she was saying there's a lot of flu about, and I said, well, that seems to be the case every year now. But, you know, like I say, I'll be 71 in about 3 weeks' time, so I go back quite a long way. And I said to her, you know, if you go back about 50 years, can you remember how much flu there was in those days? And she said, well, there wasn't really a lot of it. When somebody had the flu in those days, and I can remember, it was quite a big deal. You know, usually you were going to be okay, but, you know, it made you poorly. You know, all your bones ached and you had to go to bed for a week maybe or so. And it might have been 2 or 3 weeks before you started to feel okay, but it was not that common. Now today, it's like flu everywhere, isn't it? And what's the common denominator of all this lot? It's the flu bloody jab, in my opinion. And I think they're actually giving people the flu.
Yeah.
That's my feeling about it, because you never had this before. You know?
Yeah.
Stopped taking the flu jab because she had flu jabs because her doctor said have the flu jab, and she got flu instantly. Now their position is, it's a mild version of the flu, so your body gets used to it. So when a big flu comes along, it's not so bad. Well, how do you know it's not so bad? How do you know if you hadn't had the jab for the flu? You know, whether the flu will be good or bad if you get it naturally anyway.
Well, my next door neighbour, every year he's had the flu jab, he's been ill, and every year I say to him, look. Dave, it's another Dave. I say, you know, can't you see that there's a correlation between you get the jab and then, you know, a few days later you're ill. You know, he says, I'm never having it again. He says
on Twitter, they banned.
Well, then every year, same old thing. He gets the jab and he's ill again. You know,
on Twitter they banned the hashtag natural immunity.
Oh,
what a fraud!
Do you know, me and my girlfriend have been taking these vitamin D and vitamin B drops for the last 2 years. We haven't had a cold, nothing.
No.
Been absolutely fine.
Absolutely
fine.
There is
teaspoon under the tongue.
I don't know where where I read it or saw it. It might have been InfoWars actually, but there's apparently some report saying if you take natural, if you take D3, vitamin D3 on a regular basis, especially kind of like an upped dose of it,
Yeah.
Obviously, you've got to kind of look at the recommended dose and make sure you don't go over it. But if you have like a high dose of vitamin D, you're almost impossible to get any kind of virus or bacterial infection.
Wow.
In theory,
It's
So,
true.
yeah.
I take, on average, probably 15,000 IUs a day.
Yeah.
Vitamin D, and have done for years.
Yeah.
And so I'm fine. I also take black seed oil.
Yeah.
Which apparently, according to the great Muslim teachers of the past, cures everything except death. I also take something called NAC, which is a powder which you dissolve in orange juice or something like that. You know, it's a bit tarty, the taste of it. But apparently, again, that has got tremendous antiviral properties. I take zinc. And I've started to take, collagen.
Oh, yeah, collagen powder. My girlfriend takes that one as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I tell you what, I've noticed a difference.
Yeah.
You know, as you get older, the skin on your hands is slow to return if you pinch it together.
Yeah.
Mine started bouncing
There you
back.
go. Well, this is what they put in people's lips, don't they, to make them bigger and sexy?
Yeah.
Checked it, but taking it naturally.
I'm not going that far.
No, just watch out where it inflates, you know.
So apparently, I it just reminded me on the vitamin D thing. Apparently, get this news. It's from the Epoch Times, but you'll probably find it elsewhere.
Yeah.
Missouri doctor faces $500 billion in FTC fines for promoting vitamin D during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
This is Missouri. A St. Louis chiropractor, $500 billion for promoting vitamin D. His name, I think, is Dr. Eric Napute, Napute, Dr. Eric Napute. I might have pronounced that wrong, but so he's promoting vitamin D, and he faces $500 billion in fines.
They call him doctor now that he works at McDonald's.
And
Anyway,
meanwhile,
to close, but yeah, Caroline, we got.
meanwhile, the vaccine companies have completely immunized, if that's the word. What's the word? They have complete immunity from prosecution.
Of course.
So you cannot sue, in America anyway, you cannot sue the vaccine companies that might have given you myocarditis.
They knew ahead of the game.
Yeah.
Shall we finish on a
positive note?
A positive, optimistic note, and that is, I'm absolutely certain we're going to win this battle.
I hope.
Good.
100% guaranteed.
Cool.
Okay.
Now, how can people find out more about you, Robert? I know that you've got the Macclesfield UFO Society website.
I do, yes, yeah. And there's a link, an email link there. They can get in touch with me there, as you know.
Cool.
I'll be happy to. I've made some real good friends through that website. It's I pay for it every year. Yeah. And I think it's money well spent, you know.
Excellent. Well, keep up the great work. It's been a fascinating couple of hours chat.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us once again. And it's good to see you well and everything. And keep taking the collagen.
I will.
Send us updated pictures, see how everything's shaping up on the lips and the skin. And
I think you should get those duck lips.
Well, unfortunately, I've got the ET lips, you know.
That's right.
No lips at all, hardly.
if you take it too much, you could end up looking like a spitting image puppet. So just be warned. But it probably says that on the packet.
Well, I would say, if you have a look at what's his name, Meister Eckhart, Eckhart. You have a look at him now. You'll see a painting of him. Put those clothes on me, and
right. Okay, we'll do. We'll search that out. Well, thank you very much again for joining us. And you can catch us next month on the Paranormal Peep Show on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. So it's good night from myself, Neil Geddes-Ward, and it's good night from Andy.
Good night, everybody. And please remember that anything that we've discussed today is our own opinion and is not medical fact.
Yeah, and a final word from Robert.
Yeah, and good night from me. It's been great, fellas.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. All right, good night, everybody.
See you later.
Good night. Good night.
You're listening to the Paranormal UK Radio Network, voted #1 for paranormal podcasts in the UK.